The captured human was ordered to die until he saved the enemy general's child. The cold was a physical weight, pressing in from all sides. It rose from the black, hewn stone of the execution platform, a massive slab of volcanic glass set in the center of an impossibly large arena. Elias kept his gaze forward, his breathing measured, refusing to give the tens of thousands of aliens watching him the satisfaction of a shiver. The wind cut across his exposed torso, sharp as a filleting knife, carrying the musky, predatory scent of the crowd, a smell like damp fur and charged metal. His wrists were bound behind him by a thick, amber-colored resin cuff. He'd spent 3 days in a dark, resonant cell testing it. No seam, no lock, no give. It was designed to shatter bone before it cracked. Primitive. Effective. He watched her emerge onto the high dais carved into the arena's far wall, a figure of silver and ice. General Theron. She moved with a fluid, lethal grace that his tactical overlay, now long gone, would have flagged as supremely dangerous. Her armor was a dark, burnished silver, articulated to a powerful frame. Long, white-silver hair, unbound, flowed down her back. From it, 2 pointed, furred ears, the same silver as her hair, rose, alert and swiveling, cataloging the arena. Her face was a mask of aristocratic, symmetrical beauty and absolute Arctic command. At her side, a small, gauntleted hand lost in hers was a child. A miniature of the general, wrapped in white furs, her own small ears peeking through a simple silver circlet. Her heir, Alara. The child's eyes, a piercing blue identical to her mother's, found him instantly, not with fear, but with a wide, unnerving curiosity. A second figure, a broad, scarred male named Kairos, stepped forward on the dais. His black armor was a stark, brutalist contrast to Theron's fluid silver. Kairos was the one who had overseen his interrogation, a process Elias had endured with grim, silent professionalism. Kairos unrolled a metallic scroll, his voice booming across the hush, amplified by some unseen technology. "The creature known as Elias of the human contagion," he bellowed, his voice dripping with theatrical contempt. A roar of approval rose from the crowd. "This soldier, a being without honor, without a sacred bond, is found guilty of trespass on a sovereign Theron world." Kairos paced, gesturing to Elias. "He is found guilty of unauthorized sentience and the murder of 6 Theron warriors who attempted to detain him." "They attempted to skin my partner alive," Elias thought, his jaw tightening, but his expression remained granite. He had made them pay for that, one by one. "By the sacred law of the Cathera," Kairos continued, his voice dropping to a snarl, "he is deemed unbound. A chaos element, a rabid animal strayed from its polluted homeworld. His presence is forfeit. His life is void." Elias registered the words, but his focus was on the dais. He watched the micro-interactions, the way Theron's hand rested on her child's shoulder, a seemingly casual gesture that was, he knew, an anchor of possessive protection. He watched the way Kairos's gaze lingered on the girl for a fraction of a second too long, a flicker of something that wasn't loyalty. Theron rose. She didn't shout. Her voice cut through the arena's expectant hush, cold and clear as glacial ice, carrying to every corner. "The sentence is passed," she declared. "Let the executioner proceed." A massive Cathera warrior, easily 8 feet tall, stepped onto the platform. He wore only a leather harness, his muscled torso covered in ritualistic white scars. He activated a long, double-headed energy glaive. It hummed, a low, hungry sound, the air crackling and distorting around its glowing edges. The executioner advanced. Elias tensed, bracing his muscles, sinking his weight. He ran a final, desperate inventory. 2 guards on the platform, 4 at its base, 20 yards to the dais. He wasn't getting out, but he wouldn't die on his knees. The executioner raised the glaive, a 2-handed swing designed to sever and cauterize in one motion. Elias saw it before anyone else. Not a sound, not a smell, just a flicker, a shimmer in the air to the left of the dais like heat haze buckling over a high-output engine, a high-end cloaking field, imperfect in the atmospheric distortion. The shimmer coalesced, an assassin, dark-clad, tactical, holding a short, vibrating energy blade. He was moving impossibly fast, lunging past Theron. His target was horrifically clear. The child. There was no thought, only 3 days of failed escape attempts, a lifetime of training, and pure, unadulterated reaction. Elias roared, a primal human sound that shocked the arena, a blast of sheer defiance. He didn't just pull against his bindings. As the executioner flinched, momentarily distracted by the sound, Elias used the motion. He snapped his arms down, leveraging his entire body weight, dislocating his own left shoulder with a wet, agonizing pop. Then, with a scream of pain and exertion, he torqued his body and snapped his arms up. The hardened resin cuff, not designed for that specific angle of bidirectional torsion, shattered into a dozen pieces. He was moving before the pieces hit the stone. He launched himself from the platform in a flat dive, a 20-foot drop. He hit the stone floor below, his good shoulder taking the impact, rolling through the bone-jarring shock to absorb the momentum. His dislocated arms screamed, a useless, fiery weight. The guards at the base of the platform were still turning, their weapons half raised, their minds unable to process the condemned prisoner breaking his unbreakable bonds and leaping toward the general's dais. He was up in a second, sprinting low and fast, vaulting the dais railing in a single fluid motion. The assassin's blade was inches from Alara's chest. Theron had spun, her own sidearm impossibly fast, but Elias was already there. He slammed into the assassin from the side, a brutal full-body tackle that sent them both sprawling across the stone. The assassin was Theron, fast and strong, but he was also surprised. Elias was inside his guard, his one good arm a blur. It was dirty. Human. He didn't fight with honor. He fought to end the threat. He blocked the energy blade with the assassin's own armored vambrace, the feedback scorching his skin. He drove his knee into the alien's midsection, then slammed the heel of his palm into the softer cartilage of their throat. As the assassin gagged, his lunge broken, Elias used his momentum, rolling over him, grabbing the wrist of the knife hand and twisting it at an angle the joint wasn't made for. A sickening snap. The blade clattered. Elias didn't stop. He ripped the weapon from the assassin's spasming grip, reversed it, and ended the fight with a single, brutal thrust into the gap between the helmet and the collar. Silence. Absolute, ringing silence. The wind howled into the vacuum. Elias knelt on the dais, his chest heaving, the assassin's blood steaming on his hands. His dislocated shoulder hung at a grotesque angle. In front of him, frozen in shock, was the child, Alara. She stared at him, those wide blue eyes identical to her mother's, taking in his bloody hands, his ruined arm, the dead body at his feet. Then she did the last thing he expected. She took 2 small, deliberate steps, her hands fisting the white fur of her coat, and clung to his leg. He looked up. The entire arena was on its feet, a sea of silent, stunned predators. Kyrus looked apoplectic, his face a mask of purple rage, his plan, whatever it was, utterly ruined. Theron's personal guard, the Silver Guard, finally swarmed the dais, their high-tech pulse rifles leveled, forming a tight circle, all weapons trained on Elias's head. Theron herself hadn't moved. She stood rigid, her sidearms still raised, her chest rising and falling in sharp, controlled breaths. She stared at the human, bloodied and half-naked, his body protectively shielding her daughter. She raised a single gauntleted hand, the guards froze. Slowly, she lowered her weapon, holstering it with a deliberate click. She descended the few steps from her command throne to the main platform. Her movements were not a walk. They were a stalk, each step silent and measured. She stopped directly in front of him, so close he was forced to look up, craning his neck. She was a silver-clad mountain, eclipsing the sky. Her scent hit him, overpowering the blood and ozone, crisp snow, sharp and metallic. Her eyes weren't cold now. They were blazing, a blue fire of an emotion he couldn't name. It wasn't gratitude. It was something far more complex, a possessive proprietary heat that made the hair on his arm stand up. "You have saved the heir," she said, her voice a low, guttural vibration that he felt in his chest more than heard. "The life debt is sacred, the law is absolute, the execution is void." She crouched, a shockingly graceful movement for someone in full armor, bringing her face level with his. He could see the intricate, crystalline mechanics of her pupils as they adjusted to him, analyzing his wounds, his posture, his very existence. "You are vassal guard," she declared, the words an iron contract, each one a hammer blow, sealing his fate. "You belong to me now." Theron rose to her full imposing height, the blue fire in her eyes banking to an arctic calm. The arena was a vast, ringing void of silence. On the dais, Kyrus was rigid, his scarred face a mask of apoplectic fury. Theron's voice was no longer a low vibration, but a sharp, commanding crack. Anya, see to my daughter. A silver guard moved to retrieve Alara, but the child clung to Elias's leg, hissing. Theron's voice softened, but only by a fraction. Alara, come! The child hesitated, her bright blue eyes flicking from Elias to her mother. After a tense second, she reluctantly released her grip. The guard swept her up and strode from the dais. Theron's attention snapped back to Elias. The ice was absolute. On your feet, human. Elias gritted his teeth and pushed himself up. The world swam, his dislocated shoulder a sphere of agony. The silver guard tensed, rifles aimed at his center mass. He was an asset, not a target. A different kind of cage. Bring him, Theron ordered. She turned her back to him, a calculated gesture of absolute confidence, and strode from the dais without a second glance. 2 guards seized his good arm. He refused to be dragged, planting his feet and walking, partitioning the roaring wave of pain. He was marched from the arena, not back to the dank lower cells, but up into the towering central command spire. They moved through vast halls, their footsteps echoing on polished obsidian floors. Every cathedra they passed, armored soldiers, robed aristocrats, stopped dead, their predatory ears flattening in shock. They didn't take him to a barracks. They took him to a high-tech medical bay, adjoining a sprawling suite of personal rooms. A Kithaeron medic, his face impassive, approached. The general wants him functional, the lead guard stated, shoving Elias toward a diagnostic slab. The medic's examination was rough, impersonal, his long 6-fingered hands probing the ruined shoulder. This joint is shattered, the medic observed to the guard, as if Elias wasn't there. Primitive articulation. Without warning, the medic braced a foot on Elias's chest and yanked the arm. Elias roared as bone grated, a wet, heavy thump echoing in the room as the joint was forced back into a semblance of its socket. Black spots danced in his vision. Before he could recover, the medic pressed a dermal synthesizer against the wound. It hissed, a blast of arctic cold and deep, stinging pain following. He is unbound, the medic muttered, applying a black stabilizing spray that hardened instantly. His biology is chaotic. He will live. The guards hauled him from the table. They shoved a bundle of black fabric into his chest. Clean yourself, put these on. In a sanitation room, a high-pressure sonic shower blasted the grime and caked blood from his skin in seconds. The adrenaline faded, leaving only deep, bone-bruising pain. The clothes weren't a prisoner's tunic, but a uniform. Thick, flexible, black. As he pulled it on, he saw the silver-stitched crest on the shoulder, Theron's snarling lupine head. He had been branded. The lead guard opened the door, rifle ready. You are vassal guard. Your life is bound to the general and the heir. You will remain within 30 paces of them at all times. You are a shield, nothing more. And if I choose to walk more than 30 paces, Elias asked, his voice a rough rasp. The guard's hand drifted to a sidearm. The general holds the debt. Only she may void you, but I am authorized to cripple you. Do not test the boundary. He was marched from the medbay and into her private chambers. It was a vast, bi-level suite of dark stone, rich furs, and silent, high-tech interfaces. One entire wall was a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the Caldera city. Holographic tactical displays shimmered in the air. Alara was kneeling on a white fur rug, playing with carved figures. Her attention locked on him. Theron was also there, changed from her battle plate into a dark gray uniform. A sidearm on her hip proved she was never unarmed. She looked less like a tank, more like a coiled blade. "Leave us," Theron commanded the guards. The 2 silver guard hesitated, their ears flattening. "General, the prisoner is—" "He is vassal guard," she cut in, her voice lethal. "And he is mine. Leave us." The guards bowed stiffly and backed out. The heavy stone door hissed shut with the finality of a tomb. The room was silent, save for the hum of interfaces and the whisper of the wind. Elias stood at a modified parade rest, his body screaming, his senses on high alert. Theron circled him, her movements unnervingly silent, a predator assessing him. She stopped directly in front, so close he felt her warmth. Taller than him, she forced him to look up. "You are an anomaly," she stated, her voice a low murmur. "You broke Kithaeron-grade resin. Our tactical models said that was impossible for a human." "It had a flaw," Elias said, his voice rough. "No," she countered, her eyes narrowing. "You are a flaw in my calculations." She outlined his new reality, her voice devoid of emotion. You will stand watch in this room. You will eat when I eat. You will sleep in the post alcove by the door. You will be my shadow and the heir's shield. Your life is no longer your own. It is forfeit to my bloodline. Do you understand? I understand I'm a prisoner, he replied. You are a tool, she hissed, stepping closer, crowding his space, backing him against one of the cold stone pillars. It was a deliberate physical act of dominance. He could smell her now without the metallic tang of the arena. Crisp snow and something else, something clean and sharp like ozone. Her bare hand came up. Her fingers were long, pale, her nails naturally sharp like polished black obsidian. She didn't touch his face. She traced the outline of the new silver crest on his shoulder. My tool, she whispered, the words a possessive caress. Her fingertips brushed the fabric, and her thumb grazed the exposed skin of his neck just above the collar. He felt the light trace of her nail. A shiver he couldn't control ran down his spine, a reaction not to the cold, but to the touch. He didn't flinch, he didn't pull away. He held her gaze, his heart hammering a brutal, steady rhythm against his ribs. This was a new kind of battle, one of proximity and will. I will use you, human, she murmured, her face inches from his, and when I am done, I will discard you. I'm still here, General, Elias said, his voice flat. The tension was electric, a palpable thing that crackled in the air between them. Her pupils were dilated, her blue eyes blazing. Mother? The small voice shattered the moment like a pane of glass. Theron snapped back, the predatory tension vanishing in a microsecond. She straightened, stepping away from him, her composure instantly, icily restored. Alara had walked up, holding a small carved object, a little six-legged beast. The assassin, Alara asked, her voice quiet. Is he still broken? Yes, Alara, he is, Theron replied, her voice clipped. The child looked at Elias, her head tilted. You were fast. I was lucky, Elias replied, his throat tight. No, Alara said, with the simple, unnerving finality of a child. You were fast. She looked at her mother. Is he staying? He is, Theron said. He is our new shield. She pointed to a recessed alcove by the main door. Your post. Night fell. Elias stood in the alcove, his body a map of pain. He watched Theron's silhouette through a screen partitioning her workspace. She wasn't sleeping. He could hear her breathing in the quiet room. He was trapped, bound by an alien code to a woman who, 12 hours ago, had ordered his death, trapped in the den of the predator. The days blurred into a tense, surreal rhythm. Elias was Theron's shadow. He stood in the alcove of her chambers while she worked, stood behind her chair as she ate, and followed 3 paces behind her and Alara through the spire. His presence was a constant, jarring note in the cold lupine society, a living symbol of the general's broken tradition. His human ingenuity revealed itself in small, corrosive observations. A week into his service, they were in an armored transport sweeping through the lower city. Alara was seated between them, quiet. Elias's senses were duller than the Kathira's, but he saw patterns. There, he said suddenly, pointing. The silver guard beside him didn't flinch. Civilian traffic. No, Elias insisted. 2 o'clock high. That drone, it's not civilian, it's matching our velocity vector, not following a city lane. Theron's voice was sharp. Scan it. The guard ran the scan. His body went rigid. It's non-compliant, General. Military-grade cloaking sequence initiating. Target it, she ordered. A turret on their transport swiveled and fired, a lance of blue energy vaporizing the drone in a silent flash. Theron's eyes found Elias's in the transport's dim light. She said nothing, but her gaze was heavy, analytical. Even his bond with Alara became a tactical asset. The child had taken to watching him with a silent fascination. One afternoon, she brought him one of her toys, a small silver disc. It's broken, she announced, holding it up. Elias took it. He spent 10 minutes pulling it apart and resoldering its insides with a small tool from Theron's desk. What are you doing to my Vox? She asked. Giving it a new trick, he replied. He handed it back, tapping the crystal in its center. Keep this with you. If anyone comes into your room who isn't me, your mother, or guard captain Anya, it will make a sound, a very loud one. He had modified its friend-foe identifier, slaving it to the proximity sensors at her door. Alara's eyes went wide with delight. Theron watched the entire exchange from her desk, her fingers steepled, her expression unreadable. The true test came during a high-strategy meeting in the main command center. Theron stood at the center, dominating the space. Elias stood at his new formal post. Just behind her and to the right, his black uniform a stark contrast to their silver. Kairos strode into the room, his black armor clattering on the stone. "Your projections are too conservative, General," Kairos stated, his voice a challenging boom. "We should be pressing the advantage at the Krellin Pass." "Your advantage would leave our flank exposed," Theron replied, her voice lethally calm, never turning to face him. "The line holds." Kairos sneered, and his eyes deliberately flicked to Elias. "Your strategies have become timid, Theron. Perhaps your new pet has dulled your claws." The room went dead silent. The Theron officers froze, their ears pinning back. Elias didn't move a muscle. Theron turned, her movement slow, deliberate. "My pet, as you call him, has already proven more effective at protecting the heir than your entire internal security force, Kairos. He saw the assassin you missed." Darkened with rage. "That was a tragic lapse." "It was a failure," Theron cut in, her voice like cracking ice. "And this human is the only reason my daughter is alive. Speak to the strategy or be silent." Kairos seethed, but he was beaten. He bowed stiffly. "As you command, General." But as he turned, his gaze swept the room and settled for a fraction of a second on Alara, who was in a small, shielded alcove. Elias saw it. It wasn't the hot anger he'd shown the general. It was cold. It was calculating. It was the look of a man checking an asset. That, Elias knew, was the real threat. The next night it happened. It was subtle. A formal dinner in Theron's private dining hall. Just her and Alara. Elias stood guard by the door. A servant brought in the final dishes, including a small, colorful bowl of glistening fruit paste for Alara. Elias's head lifted. His senses were blunt, but they were different. The Kithira, with their hyperacute hearing and lupine sense of smell, were attuned to their own biology. Elias smelled something wrong. Under the sweet, cloying aroma of the fruit, there was a faint, bitter chemical tang, like burnt almonds. Alara picked up her spoon. "Palafruit!" "Alara, wait," Elias said. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a gunshot. Theron was on her feet in an instant, her hand on her sidearm. "What is this, vassal?" "The food," Elias said, his gaze locked on the small bowl. He moved forward, a breach of protocol. "Step away from the table, General." He reached the bowl, his repaired shoulder aching. He lowered his face, sniffing. The bitter scent was stronger now. "The chase spice," Theron said, her own senses now focused. "It's too strong, it's masking." "Get her back," Elias ordered, his voice hard. Theron didn't bristle. She grabbed Alara, pulling her back. Elias pulled one of his black gloves on tight. He dipped a single finger into the paste. He held it up. The high-tech fiber of the glove was discoloring. A wisp of faint, oily smoke rose from the fabric as it dissolved. "A synthetic corrosive," Elias stated, his voice flat. "Odorless to you, meant to look like an allergic reaction. It would have destroyed her throat and stomach in seconds." Theron's face went white, a shade of rage and terror he had never seen. She slammed the silent alarm on her wrist. The room was flooded with silver guard in seconds. The servant was found in a service corridor, dead, a fast-acting poison vial clutched in his hand. Later, a datapad linked the payment to a server block controlled by Kairos's clan. It was deniable, but the message was clear. That night, the spire was silent, locked down. Elias stood at his post. The door to Theron's private study chimed. "Enter," her voice commanded. He walked in. The room was dark, lit only by the shimmering light of a holographic star map. The general was not in her uniform. She wore a simple black tunic and pants, her feet bare on the cold stone. She looked vulnerable. It was the most dangerous he had ever seen her. She was pouring 2 glasses of a dark, viscous Kitharan spirit. She held one out to him. He stood still. "General, I am on duty." "You are a shield," she said, her voice low, thick. "And you have been. Take it, Elias." It was the first time she had used his name. He took the glass. The liquid was heavy, smelling of smoke. "You see things we do not," she whispered, not looking at him, but at the swirling map. "The drone. This poison. Our senses are sharp, human, but they are focused. Yours are. Broad. You see the patterns we miss. The power dynamic was gone. He was no longer just a tool. He was essential. She turned, her body silhouetted against the star map. She approached him, stopping so close he could smell the spirit on her breath, sharp and sweet, beneath the scent of snow and ozone. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "In the arena, why did you save her? It was not your duty. I ordered your death." He held her gaze, the blue of her eyes almost luminous in the dark. "It's what we do," he said, his voice rough. The simplicity of his answer, the sheer illogical humanity of it, seemed to shatter her composure. "We?" she breathed. "Your contagion?" "My people," he clarified. "We protect our young, even when they're not ours." She was too close now. He could feel the heat radiating from her. Her hand came up, slow, deliberate. It was not a threat. Her fingers were cool. She touched his face, her thumb tracing the line of his jaw, then coming to rest with feather-light pressure on his lower lip. A gesture of pure, dangerous, analytical curiosity. "You are a dangerous anomaly, Elias," she whispered, her eyes searching his. Before he could breathe, before he could react to the impossible intimacy of the touch, a high-pitched, shrill alarm blared from the outer chamber. It wasn't the crimson alert of a security breach. It was a medical alert. They heard a single choked scream, "Alara!" Theron's hand dropped from his face as if his skin had burned her. The glass of spirit, forgotten, shattered on the stone floor. The intimacy of the moment was vaporized, replaced by a cold, adrenaline-fueled terror. "Alara!" Theron didn't just run. She moved. She was across her study and through the connecting door to Alara's sleeping chambers in 2 silent, predatory bounds. Elias was right behind her, his own glass slammed down, his mind snapping from the hypoxic haze of her proximity to full combat alert. They burst into the room. The medical alarm was a shrill, piercing cry from a wall panel. Alara was in her bed, her small body rigid, convulsing under the heavy fur blankets. Her breathing was a shallow, wet gasp. In the dim light, her skin was a ghastly pale gray, but dark, spidery veins were branching out from her neck, crawling up her face. Theron's stoic facade, the one that had held in the arena and the command center, was gone. It had shattered completely. "Alara!" she cried, a raw, guttural sound of pure maternal panic. She fell to her knees by the bed, her hands hovering over her daughter, afraid to touch her. "Medtechs! To my chambers! Now!" 2 Theron medics, a man and a woman, burst in moments later, a mobile diagnostic cart humming between them. They were followed by Anya, the guard captain, her rifle raised, sweeping the room for threats. "There is no one here," Elias snapped, shoving past her. "Get on the door, no one else enters." Anya's ears flattened at the human's command, but she took the post, her loyalty to Theron overriding her confusion. The medics ran scanners over Alara's body. The readouts were chaotic, the holographic displays flickering with corrupted data. "General, we don't understand," the male medic stammered, his voice tight with fear. "Her cellular structure is degrading. It's no known pathogen. Our nanites, they are being consumed." "Fix her!" Theron roared, grabbing the front of his tunic, her eyes blazing with a mother's terror. "We cannot," the medic choked out. "The agent is too fast. We can't identify it." While Theron's world collapsed, Elias's narrowed. He was a soldier, not a doctor. This wasn't a disease. It was an attack. The room was compromised. He ignored the panicking medics and began his own sweep. His gaze raked the walls, the ceiling, the floor. He moved to the main air vent, his senses alert. He remembered the poisoned palafruit, the bitter almond smell. This was different. Here, there was a faint, sickly sweet chemical smell, almost imperceptible, like overripe flowers and hot metal. It was strongest by the vent. "The poison at dinner," he said, his voice cutting through Theron's desperate pleading. "It was a feint." Theron looked up, her face a mask of confusion and grief. "What are you talking about?" "Kyrus isn't a fool," Elias said, his hands moving to the vent's grate. "He wouldn't try the same tactic twice. The poison was to make you look for ingested agents. He wanted you watching the food. He wanted you to miss this." He ripped the grate from the wall. It was clean, but wedged deep inside the duct, he saw it. A small black device, no bigger than his thumb, its indicator light dark. A microscopic aerosol dispenser, triggered remotely. It was empty now. This is a delivery system, Elias stated, pulling it out. It's not a poison. It's a biological agent. It was pumped into her room while she slept. He turned to Theron, the horrible, cold logic clicking into place. He's not just trying to kill her, General. He's making her sick. This is a bloodline plague, designed to attack her then, you. It makes the assassination look like a natural tragedy, a genetic weakness. Kyrus gets the heir and the General out of the way, and his own claim is strengthened. Theron's eyes widened, the tactical implications battling with her raw horror. She understood. "Get me to your medbay," Elias commanded, his voice hard. "The main one, now!" Theron didn't question him. She scooped Alara's limp, feverish body from the bed, wrapping her in the blankets, and ran. They stormed the main medbay, Elias holding the dispenser, Theron carrying her dying child. "Put her in a containment field," he ordered the terrified staff. "Full bio-isolation." He slammed the dispenser under a high-resolution molecular analyzer, the screen filled with data, a complex engineered retrovirus, its protein shell wrapped in a synthetic camouflage. Elias stared at the code. He'd seen a variant of it before. "Xylo 7, he breathed. "We encountered it on Cygnus. It bonded with a native fungus, wiped out the colony. But this is modified. It's designed to attack, yes, your species' primary immune receptor. It's a perfect key in a lock." He ran to another console, his fingers flying across the interface, pulling up the biological data the Kythera had taken from him during his capture. He slammed it against the virus data. "My inferior human biology," he said, a grim, sharp laugh escaping him. "Our receptors are different. The virus it can't bind. The key doesn't fit." He looked up at Theron, who was watching her daughter shudder in the containment field. "I'm immune." "Immune?" she whispered, her voice broken. "What good is that?" "It's not just immune," Elias said, his mind racing. "My blood plasma. It produces antibodies to fight derivatives of the Xylo 7 strain. I am the cure, or at least the anti-serum." He strode to the blood synthesizer, a machine designed for rapid battlefield transfusions. "There's no time to isolate the antibodies. I have to synthesize a broad-spectrum serum directly from my plasma. Now." He ripped the sleeve of his black uniform, exposing the hard muscle and veins of his bicep. He grabbed a thick-bore needle from the machine, slapping it onto the port. "What are you doing?" Theron asked. "Saving her," he said, and plunged the needle into his own arm. He hit the activation stud. The machine whined, its pumps engaging, drawing his blood at a brutal, dangerous rate. Elias grunted, his free hand gripping the medical slab, his knuckles white. This wasn't a donation. This was a harvest. The machine was pulling his blood, filtering it, and synthesizing the plasma into an anti-serum in a single, agonizing cycle. Sweat beaded on his forehead. The room began to tilt, his vision graying at the edges from the blood loss. Theron stood frozen, watching him. Her armor was gone, her face naked with a terror that was deeper than any battlefield. She watched this human, this creature she had ordered to die willingly, painfully bleed to save her daughter. The intimacy of the act was stark, primal. Her hand, trembling, came up. She took a sterile cloth from a tray and, with a desperate, shaky gesture, wiped the cold sweat from his brow. Her touch was no longer an analytical caress. It was the touch of a drowning woman. "You are giving your blood for my blood," she whispered, the words a prayer, a new, sacred contract. "Why?" Elias looked at her, his teeth gritted against the pull of the machine. "I told you, it's what we do." The machine beeped, a high-pitched, triumphant sound. A single glowing vial of clear golden serum detached. "It's done," Elias gasped, pulling the needle from his arm. He stumbled, weak. Theron caught him, her arm instinctively going around his waist, supporting him. Her strength was the only thing holding him up. He grabbed the vial. He turned toward Alara's containment field, the cure in his hand. The medbay doors hissed open, not with a chime but with a screech of a security override breach. Kyrus stormed in, flanked by 4 of his own personal guard, their black armor a stark contrast to the white room, their weapons raised. His face was a mask of righteous fury. "There!" Kyrus roared, pointing at Elias. "The human has poisoned the heir. Look, he has the evidence in his hand. He's trying to finish the job." Theron, unarmed, her arm still around the weakened Elias, stepped between Kyrus and her child. "You are not touching my vassal," she snarls, her voice a low, lethal growl. "The child is tainted, as is the general," Kyrus shouted, appealing to the terrified medics. "This pet has poisoned her. Seize them. They must all be cleansed." Theron didn't flinch. Her body, still supporting Elias, became a wall of iron. Her voice was a low, lethal growl, vibrating with a rage Kyrus had never heard. "You dare, Kyrus, in my medbay accusing my vassal?" "He is unbound," Kyrus roared, signaling his men. "He has poisoned the bloodline. Look at the cure in his hand. He's trying to finish the job. Seize him, and seize the general. She is compromised." The 4 black-clad guards fanned out, their pulse rifles leveling. The Theron medtechs scrambled back, pressing themselves against the far wall in terror. Elias, his vision still graying from the massive blood loss, shoved himself off Theron's support. He swayed, but he stood. "The child," he gasped, holding up the golden vial of serum. "She has minutes." "Stop him!" Kyrus shrieked. "He's trying to administer the final dose." A guard lunged for Elias. Despite the blood loss, Elias's training was pure, owned reflex. He was too weak to trade blows, so he used CQC, a brutal human efficiency. He didn't block, he redirected. He used the guard's momentum, spun inside his arm, and slammed his elbow into the Cathira's throat. The guard dropped, gagging. Elias stumbled toward the containment field's access panel. "Theron, buy me 10 seconds." "I will buy you an hour," she snarled. Another guard fired. The plasma bolt sizzled past Elias's head, shattering a diagnostic screen. Theron was a silver-gray blur. She was unarmed, but she was the apex predator in this room. She moved under the guard's aim, her hand grabbing the rifle's barrel, yanking it down. Her other hand, fingers stiffened into a blade, slammed into the gap between the guard's helmet and his body armor. A sickening crack of vertebrae. He collapsed, lifeless. Elias slammed his palm on the access panel. The containment field hissed open. Alara was barely breathing, her skin a mottled gray. He grabbed a dermal injector from the tray, jammed the vial in, and pressed it against her neck. A sharp hiss. The serum was in. "It's done," he panted. "Traitor!" Kyrus roared. He drew his own heavy sidearm and fired, not at Elias, but at Theron. Elias was already moving. He threw himself sideways, tackling Theron's legs, shoving her out of the line of fire. The plasma bolt, aimed for her chest, seared across his back. He roared, a sharp, choked sound. The smell of his own flesh charring filled the air. The pain was absolute, a white-hot flash that dwarfed the ache of his shoulder and the weakness from the blood draw. Theron landed, rolled, and came up. She saw him. She saw him, weakened from bleeding for her child. Now take a plasma bolt for her. She saw the new smoking wound on his back. He had given his blood and now his body. Something in her snapped. She rose, her face utterly calm, but her eyes, the bright Arctic blue was gone, replaced by a solid, blazing white. "Kyrus," she whispered. The name was an epitaph. The last 2 guards in Kyrus attacked at once. Elias, his back on fire, pushed himself to his feet and fought back to back with her. He was compromised, his movements sluggish, but his CQC was a marvel of human efficiency. He met the first guard's rifle butt with his forearm, breaking the alien's wrist, and shattered his knee with a sidekick. Theron was different. She was not a soldier. She was a natural disaster. She disarmed the second guard and used the rifle as a club, shattering his visor. The last guard she threw into the wall with a force that dented the alloy plating. "Now just Kyrus." He scrambled back, seeing his guards broken, his plan in ruins. He raised his pistol, his hand shaking. Theron's hand snapped his wrist. The bones powdered. He screamed. She didn't stop. She shattered his elbow, then his other arm. She kicked his leg, breaking his knee. He collapsed, a broken puppet, screaming. She stood over him, breathing heavily, her eyes still white. She picked up his fallen pistol, pressing it to his forehead. "Exile is too good for you," she panted. "Mother?" The voice was small, weak, but clear. Theron froze. The white in her eyes receded, revealing the shocked, bright blue. Elias, leaning against the wall, looked over. Alara was sitting up in the containment field, the dark, spidery veins receding from her face. Her color was returning. The medbay doors hissed open again. This time it was Theron's silver guard, led by Anya. They took in the scene, the 4 black-clad guards broken, Kyrus screaming on the floor, the general armed, and the human bleeding from a fresh plasma burn. Secure him, Theron ordered, her voice shaking. He is charged with high treason and attempted assassination of the heir. Anya, her rifle trained on Kyrus, pointed to the dispenser on the console. General, we found the trigger device in his private quarters. The data pad, it's all here. The plot was his. Kyrus was dragged away, his screams for mercy echoing down the hall. The medtechs rushed to Alara, their scanners now showing a full, miraculous recovery. Theron turned. Her eyes landed on Elias. He was sliding down the wall, his strength gone. The plasma burn on his back was ugly, a raw red weep. He was pale from blood loss. She strode to him. Her own guards tensed, but she ignored them. He looked up, his vision tunneling. She sheathed her weapon. In a shocking break of all protocol, she slid her arm under his, pulling his good arm over her shoulder, taking his weight. The general of the Cathera, the leader of her people, was carrying the human. Anya stepped forward. General, let me... No, Theron said, her voice iron. I will see to my vassal. She helped him walk, every step an agony for him. They left the medbay, leaving her guards to secure her daughter. They walked the silent obsidian halls of the spire back to her chambers. She guided him not to his alcove, but to her private sanitation room, a place of steam and warm stone. She sat him on a bench. The medics, he mumbled. The medics will see to Alara, she said. I will see to you. She returned with a medical kit. Her hands, which had just shattered bone, were now impossibly gentle. She cut away the burned, melted fabric of his uniform, exposing the raw red wound. He hissed as the cold air hit it. Be still, she murmured. Her touch was clinical, yet not. She applied a regenerative salve, her fingertips lightly brushing his skin. The scent of snow and ozone was gone, replaced by her own scent, something warmer, muskier. She worked in silence, the only sound the faint hiss of the salve and their breathing. The power dynamic was gone. He wasn't a prisoner. She wasn't a captor. They were two soldiers, tending wounds. She finished, applying a sterile white bandage. The life debt is paid, she said, her voice low, thick. She was kneeling in front of him, her eyes level with his. You gave your blood for my blood. You gave your body for mine. It is paid, Elias. You are no longer vassal guard. He met her gaze. The adrenaline was gone, leaving a heavy bone-deep awareness of her proximity. He could see the small flecks of silver in her blue irises. I'm not going anywhere, General, he said, his voice a rasp. I know, she whispered. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. But you will not call me General. She leaned in, her silver hair brushing his bare, uninjured shoulder. Her forehead pressed against his, her eyes were closed. You will call me Theron. Her lips were inches from his, the air between them electric, a contract of blood and survival replaced by something far more dangerous and infinitely more wanted.